Next, let's go up to Westfield, Indiana, and let's talk about a clover problem.
Hey, Alan, this is Scott in Westfield, Indiana. Got kind of a two-part question for you. First, I've had some serious clover creeping up here the last couple weeks. Had a little bit of it last summer. Was able to do some spot spray with some Spectracide weed stop. Had some success with that, but definitely came back with a vengeance this year. Just curious if you have any other tips besides the sprays, anything I could do to prevent it from coming back next year. Appreciate some help with that.
This is a very interesting one because clover is one of those things, every time I talk about killing clover, people will say, oh, clover's a nitrogen fixer. You need clover in your lawn. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. And that's going to be today's key word, which are nitrogen fixing plants. That's today's kind of key word or key term that we're going to explore. What are nitrogen fixers, or what are nitrogen fixing plants? Because I think there's a myth that comes up there, and I don't think people do it on purpose, but it's the way that it comes up. And what they'll do is they'll say that nitrogen-fixing plants are actually adding nitrogen to your soil, like it's some sort of magic thing. Like if you have clover in your lawn, it's sucking nitrogen out of the air, and in some way, shape, or fashion, it's pushing this nitrogen gas out into the soil, and your lawn is enjoying it, and it's helping everybody. And that is true to a certain extent, but I need to explain it to you in a little bit different way because it's a little bit of a myth about nitrogen fixers and how they actually help your lawn, or do they? So I've got an article here, and I'll flash it on the screen if you're on YouTube, but I got this from a website called Gardening Know-How, but I don't know if that's a legit site or not, but I can tell you that what's written in this article, the author, her name is Heather Rhodes, this is true, this is correct. So this is the article, it's called Nitrogen Nodules and Nitrogen Fixing Plants. Nitrogen for plants is vital to the success of a garden or a lawn. Without sufficient nitrogen, plants will fail and will be unable to grow. Nitrogen is abundant in the world, but most of the nitrogen in the world is a gas, and most plants cannot use nitrogen as a gas. Most plants must rely on the addition of nitrogen to the soil in order to be able to use it, and that's why we fertilize, right? That's me adding that in there. All right, so she continues. There are a few plants that love nitrogen gas, though, and they are able to draw the nitrogen gas from the air, store it in their roots, and these are called nitrogen-fixing plants. So how do plants fix nitrogen? Nitrogen-fixing plants don't pull nitrogen from the air on their own. They actually need help from a common bacteria called rhizobium. The bacteria infects legume plants such as peas and beans and uses the plant to help it draw nitrogen from the air. By the way, clover is in this similar family. The bacteria converts this nitrogen gas and then stores it in the roots of the plant. When the plant stores the nitrogen in the roots, it produces a lump on the root called a nitrogen nodule. This is harmless to the plant, but very beneficial to your garden. So let's stop right there. The key word here is that the clover, or the nitrogen-fixing plants, are pulling that gas out of the air, and then there are bacteria that's in their root structure that called rhizobium, and those bacteria store up that nitrogen. They're able to convert it. They are a nitrogen-fixing bacteria. They're able to store that nitrogen in nodules in the plant's roots, and in this case, clover. So basically, these bacteria are storing the nitrogen up for the clover's use, not for the lawn's use. They are very selfish. Nitrogen-fixing plants are selfish. They do not share. They are not good for your lawn. Unless, ready? Let's continue. How nitrogen nodules raise the nitrogen in soil. When legumes and other nitrogen-fixing plants, like clover, and the bacteria work together to store the nitrogen, they are creating a green warehouse in your garden. While they are growing, they release very little nitrogen into the soil. But when they are done growing and they die, their decomposition releases the stored nitrogen and increases the total nitrogen in the soil. Their death makes nitrogen for plants available later on. So I'm going to end it right there. Check this out. This is the case. The clover is not sucking nitrogen out of the air and sharing it with your lawn. It's actually doing the opposite. The nitrogen is using its advantage, its superpower, and its symbiotic relationship with these microbes to grab nitrogen out of the air and store it so the clover can take over more spots in your lawn, so it can dominate more of your lawn. It's not sharing, it's using its superpower to kill your lawn. And in fact, if you want to get that nitrogen out, you need to kill the clover. And that's why I wanted to bring this up today, because nitrogen-fixing plants are not friendly to your lawn until you kill them, and then you get the nitrogen. So that's where I'm going to tell you right now, kill the clover, feed the lawn. We should start that. We should make t-shirts. Kill the clover, feed the lawn. Now, I understand you have pollinators and things like that on there, which is another reason why don't keep clover in your lawn. Just don't, and you won't attract the pollinators to the flowers. Keep things mowed off. Don't attract them. Kill that clover before the pollinators even have a chance to care about it and get that nitrogen released into your lawn. So remember, nitrogen-fixing plants do not release the nitrogen until you kill them. So that's why it's a great idea to try to kill them here. Now, I did want to explore one other little concept here. And I don't know if this is true or not, but you all can tell me this. But I know I've heard people talk about, and I've never used steroids, but they talk about guys lifting weights and that guys that lift steroids, that what can happen is, or lift steroids, guys that use steroids, that what can happen is if they use steroids improperly or overdose the steroids, at some point, your body will stop making its own natural testosterone because it will figure, well, there's enough here already. I don't need to make any more. And it can actually have a reverse effect as to where they say that people who take steroids too much or inject too much testosterone, their body loses the ability or stops making its own, and it can actually have a negative effect. Well, I wonder if there is a similar thing that you can do in your lawn where you have nitrogen-fixing plants and they're like, hey, we got to make our own nitrogen because there ain't enough in the soil here. Well, I wonder if you could reverse that process by bombing your lawn with massive amounts of nitrogen and get those bacteria to go, well, we don't got to make no more nitrogen because there's so much here in the soil. Why are we making it? Let's just take a break. Let's take some time off. Maybe those rhizobloem or whatever they're called, the rhizobloem will take a little bit of a break and stop fixing nitrogen. I don't know if that's the case, but it makes sense to me that if you blow the lawn with nitrogen, maybe the clover will stop making its own. Now, here's one thing for sure, though. If you push your lawn hard with nitrogen, it's going to thicken up, and it's going to help to choke the clover out naturally. And that's the first thing I would tell you to do, is to build your lawn nice and thick. The other thing you want to do is make sure you're cutting tall. This is cool season grass because this is in Indiana. You want to cut as tall as you can because that will help the grass to compete. Turf competes better when it's mowed tall. At least cool season turf does. Mow it tall and let it help to crowd out the clover as you're feeding it and pushing it really, really hard with nitrogen. So that's the first couple things that I would do. And then the third thing that I would do is you can get any three-way herbicide, or you can go get Speed Zone if you want something that's a little bit more potent, but really 2,4-D and dicamba, those are the two active ingredients that you're going to want to knock out clover. I used to get some clover that would sneak into my lawn from Jake the Lawn Kid's house. I would just use regular three-way herbicide that, it had 2,4-D and dicamba in it, probably some quinclorac. Quinclorac isn't going to do anything for the clover. It's the dicamba and the 2,4-D. Maybe put in an ounce or two of baby shampoo per gallon with that mix to act as a sticker, act as a surfactant, and that should pretty much dry the clover up. The key will be to not mow before you spray it and not mow for a couple days after. Follow the label on the product that you use. Put that baby shampoo in there and let that act as a sticker. You may have to do a couple sequential applications 10 days apart, but that should really wipe the clover out pretty easy. The key is to get on it early. Get on it early. Keep the lawn thick. Those two things together, along with adding that little bit of baby shampoo to the over-the-counter weed control, should wipe the clover out fairly easily. Now,